afternoon. It's Uncle Phil. And of course, by now, you know, the Frixer is with me. Frixer's in the house. And I don't know how you feel about, we've covered the AFC East. We've covered the AFC North. Now we're heading to the AFC South today. And this is, kind of a conference that a lot of people just aren't super excited about. This one, probably the least amount of enthusiasm about it. There's some things I really like about it. Well, how do you feel about it?
I'd just say if there's a worse conference in the AFC East, it might be the AFC South. So back to you. What are your general thoughts?
Yeah, look, I think that there's some exciting stuff here. I mean, you look at the broad themes of this one. It's like C.J. Stroud had one bad year, one good year off the charts where he was all world, written him in the Hall of Fame. Then last year took a step back. Bobby Slowick was all world as offensive coordinator, supposed to be the next head coach somewhere. Then he took a step back, is out now. New offensive coordinator Nick Caley's in there for Houston. That'll be interesting. Indianapolis, Anthony Richardson is out. Daniel Jones has been named the starter for the entire year now by Shane Steichen. That's just kind of unbelievable. So lots of things going on there. Jacksonville, will this be Trevor Lawrence's year? I mean, if we talk about coaches on the hot seat, is Trevor Lawrence on the hot seat? We're going to get to that as well. And then finally, Tennessee. Again, talk to people in the building there. People there feel like they're definitely headed in the right direction. And Cam Ward certainly was by far and away the number one choice as far as quarterbacks on the board. Although Jackson Dart has looked good in preseason, but you and I both believe that preseason is certainly fool's gold. We'll see how it goes. But again, Tennessee feels great about the direction, how they're building the roster, and what they've got going there. So I think there's some really interesting things about what's happening in the league, but it's always, or in this division, that could turn this into a pretty competitive division. Let's start with you. Let's start with, we're always kind of going alphabetical order. Let's start with Houston. Let's start with the team that's been the leader of the pack. What are your thoughts about C.J. Stroud? It was kind of interesting, the news that came out recently. I mean, there was definitely a rub last year between C.J. Stroud and offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick. But supposedly in 2 years that C.J. Stroud has been there, that's come out that Bobby Slowick would not allow him to audible or change protection at the line of scrimmage. And my gosh, last year with the offensive line, he just got crushed last year. I know that's not completely unheard of. There's been others that had it. Lamar was kind of like that the very first, until he gained some trust. I mean, I know it sounds like a little bit of like, oh, that's the worst thing I ever heard, but that actually happens in the league. But what are your thoughts about C.J. Stroud? What are your expectations for him this year and for this Houston Texans team?
Well, in the AFC South, I'd say that just in general, Houston is the tallest midget, right? So they're so by default they're going to be.
I think the term these days is little person.
Oh, okay, all right, the tallest little person, whatever. But let's keep it PC. But
it is a podcast, right? All rules are off.
Okay, all right, but C.J. Stroud, I'm a believer. I like he took a step back last year. I agree. Now the whole behind the scenes stuff, I don't have time to to go into that. But yeah, he took a step back last year. It sounds like actually I'm learning something what you just mentioned about the goings on behind the scenes. And so if that held him back, that maybe he's got a more conducive situation this year. And I don't know about his processing ability. I'm not in the building, right? So a lot of this is speculation, but what he showed me his rookie season was he's got the demeanor to be a really great quarterback in this league, and he's got the arm talent, he's got the demeanor, he's got the accuracy. If he has the processing, and if he can, and if you give him more free reign with audibles, and he's good at that, like he could have a breakout year. He really could. Now the question is, does he have that ability? And we're all just going to have to see. But he's going to be doing it in a division that isn't going to be able to pose much competition for him. So they can experiment with that and give him a free rein and still win the division, even if they have to pull it back from him. So I'm positive on C.J. Stroud. He took a step back last year, but I think he'll bounce back this year. What do you think?
Well, I think he certainly has that potential. I agree with you. It just really depends on the offensive line. I mean, they did some shifting and some shuffling and some trading of the offensive line. We'll see how that actually how that works out on that. It just really depends on that. I'm real interested to see this. Obviously Nick Caley, he's totally the opposite of the coach of Bobby Slowick, and the fact that he actually puts more on the quarterback to change and to audible and change the line and change protection. So I think it'll be super interesting for him. Certainly, the defense is going to be nasty. The front seven is just going to be unbelievable. They will definitely be a top 5 defense. You could see that, if the offensive line, especially the brand new left side, I think that defines how far this team can go and where they could go. They certainly could have the potential if that gels. It typically takes about 8 to 10 weeks to install a new offense. So I wouldn't get concerned if you're Houston fans in the early part of the season, but toward the later part of the season, we'll see how it goes. From a gambling perspective, just keep in mind this one little bullet point that the Texans are 1-9 when playing in freezing temperatures. It really doesn't hurt them this year, except week 14. They go to Kansas City. That's early in December 4th. So if you've got that one marked on your calendar, save that one, because that may be an opportunity for you to look at there. So again, we'll see. I'm concerned about, you shipped away Laramie Tunsil, your starting left tackle. You shipped him away, and he went to Washington to be Jaden Daniels' blind side. I don't know how he will do or how they're going to do at left tackle without him. It'll be interesting to see. I really, when I talk about, it's just offensive line. To me, that is the bottom line for this. We'll see. I'm not going to get really twisted in the wind about it if they're not great at first. They've got, again, like you mentioned, the AFC South is not known for really stout competition. But they do have the Rams, start off at the Rams, then go to Tampa Bay. They kind of catch a break with the Rams because Stafford with his potential back issues. So that may be catching the Rams at a good time. Hadn't done as much, hadn't probably worked with the team at all. And he's got a new center this year. And so that's potentially an issue. So that maybe work. They've got Tampa Bay at home, then they go at Jacksonville, then versus Tennessee. Then they've got week 5 in Baltimore, then a bye. So I think after that bye week, we'll have a good chance to reassess and see what's going on. But, again, I really am curious to see who the real C.J. Stroud will be. And I think this offensive line will dictate that for them. So,
one thing, I don't see them as a juggernaut. I do see them as the best in the South, but the most negative thing I can say about them is that the turnover margin differential worked in their favor last year, and they should see some regression off of that. I think they were plus 10 in turnover margin, so that could work against them, and they could potentially lose 2 more games than they did last year based on that. But in terms of working it out and figuring it out, I think they have a little bit of latitude in a weak division to figure it out and to figure out if C.J. Stroud can handle more of the decision making. And if he can, they could be unlocking a giant. I think he could be really great. So we'll just have to see.
Yeah, no, I think that's a real good way. That's a good point and a great way to finish up the Houston Texans. We'll move on now to the Indianapolis Colts, who obviously – certainly the biggest news in the offseason was the passing of Jim Irsay, which is just, had long struggles with addiction. I think that's very widely known, kind of an impulsive owner. what will be the ownership like with passing on to his family, specifically his daughters. It'll be interesting to see. And then you've got, again, Anthony Richardson. I mean, it's just like you look at the quarterbacks who didn't have a lot of starts in college, starting off with Mitch Trubisky. Then you go with Trey Lance, and then you go with Anthony Richardson, and they just haven't done well. Those quarterbacks with a lot of starts in college and a lot of history, those matter in the NFL. And it's hard to just develop somebody with very few starts in the NFL and all of a sudden very few starts in the college and expect them to like, hey, we're going to teach you the game in the NFL. I realize that, what's the famous tight end who went in the Hall of Fame, Antonio Gates, this summer, didn't play a lick of college football, just played basketball at Arizona State. And then he went on to become a Hall of Fame tight end. It just doesn't work that way in quarterback. It is about snaps. It's about repetition. It is time on task. And they didn't have that. And it looks like Anthony Richardson, wouldn't be surprised at all if he gets traded. It looks like an interesting thing there. Shane Steichen has long been since called the quarterback whisperer. They took a gamble with Anthony Richardson. It didn't pay off. They have moved on officially. It's going to have to be sometime to start his career. But you got to believe that Shane Steichen's being looked at as a coach now that, is he going to be able to get it done? He supposedly was this guy that clearly turned around Jalen Hurts and was the quarterback whisperer for him. He was supposed to be the guy, between him and Jonathan Gannon, when they both left Philadelphia, Gannon went to Arizona. I've certainly seen flashes from Arizona that they've got potential. I'm eager to talk about that NFC West, but that's a long way off in the videos that we're making each day. But Shane Steichen, I would like to see what he shows this year because, they've got the talent. They brought in, again, Lou Anarumo, who was the scapegoat defensive coordinator at Cincinnati, when we've clearly established it wasn't his fault. You don't pay your players and your cheap ownership, then you get what you get. But that's what I'm wondering. What do you think about any thoughts about Shane Steichen? Any thoughts about bringing in Daniel Jones? Any thoughts about Anthony Richardson or Jim Irsay or just anything about the organization in general?
Well, I'd say your listeners are safe with this one because I'm only dangerous when I know what I'm talking about or think I know what I'm talking about. So I don't know a lot about the Colts other than, it's another organization that just kind of like, stuck in Middlesville and the fact that, that their starting quarterback lost his job, so Richardson was the 30th ranked quarterback in the NFL in QBR, and he lost his job to the 29th ranked quarterback in QBR. That tells me that like the upside, if they have any, I think there's a lot of question marks. Daniel Jones could blow up. He has some good receivers to throw to. This coaching, situation could turn out well for them, so that there could be some surprise, some upside surprise with them. But I think it's just an organization that's surrounded by question marks right now. And I don't have a strong feel for them one way or another.
Yeah, totally understand. I think that's probably the feeling of a lot of people. Last thing that I'll leave us with is that, why was Daniel Jones chosen as starter? It's because the Colts had 8 wins last year, despite being 29th in defense and 30th in giveaways. They brought in Lou Anarumo to fix the defense and are hoping that Daniel Jones can actually hold on to the ball and make a few plays that will and just make some better decisions.
Those are good takes, by the way, because I think that tells you that like if there's a surprise in the Colts, it's to the upside. It's to the upside, right? So yeah,
100% agree. But again. Bottom line for Indianapolis is that quarterback, newsflash, quarterback matters. Daniel Jones will be the 11th starting quarterback since Andrew Luck retired for the Colts. So, again, really, that'll be an interesting deal. We'll see how Andrew or Daniel Jones does, hopefully for the organization that he does, because, again, to your point, they have some potential upside because, they still finished with 8 wins despite being 29th in defense, 30th in giveaways. they have that potential that they could take that leap. And so I think this is what is just a really interesting division that a lot of people may not find interesting, that I just find fascinating in so many ways, and which leads to another one. We're coming on to the Jaguars, where Trevor Lawrence has had multiple coaches starting. There's been a lot of rumors with Trevor Lawrence. I think it's, I have some contacts, with Jacksonville, and Trevor Lawrence has been the deal with Trevor Lawrence is that Trevor has is really the old terminology is henpecked, but his wife kind of rules the roost, and he doesn't supposedly doesn't love the game as much as some of your obsessed quarterbacks. And you have to be obsessed as an NFL quarterback. You have to go all in to do that. And, much the way I do with Uncle Phil. I love to be all in with this because I love football. And it's very frustrating for me and I'm sure Jags fans as well, that a quarterback's not all in because he just got so much talent, just blew up everywhere, and, in high school and college. And then, but it takes more than talent. It takes the actual will to do it with Jacksonville. Do you have any thoughts about Trevor Lawrence? Do you see flashes? Do you think he's a bust? Because that terminology has been thrown out there with Trevor Lawrence. Some people have said that Trevor Lawrence is a bust and is just going to be a bust with that. Where do you come down on Trevor Lawrence?
So I don't have really any hot takes on Trevor Lawrence, other than to say that what you just shared is kind of interesting, because it's the first time I've heard that. So Uncle Phil's providing value with some information I haven't heard. I will say this about Trevor Lawrence. I think what you're getting from Trevor is about what you can expect to get going forward, which is basically an average NFL starter. And based on his expectations coming out, like people will say that's a bust. I think he's middle of the pack NFL starter quarterback. I don't think you can expect much better than that. And that's not terrible. That's middle of the pack. Now, are you going to win a Super Bowl with that? Probably not. But I think with Trevor, he's a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. I think that's what you can expect going forward. And I think the most positive thing I can say about him is that, or about the organization, is that they had a negative 15. They were negative 15 in the turnover margin differential last year. And so if that regresses positively for them, they could squeak out 2 or 3 more wins this year.
Yeah, I'm certainly seeing a theme here, sensing a theme on what you're focusing in on. Turnover, certainly a major player in any team's success or failure, lack thereof. So look, I mean, again, another offense that you're bringing in a new guy who's supposed to be a widely talented play caller, and Liam Cohen, kind of a interesting, a lot of people thought rough first press conference, with the Duval chant at the press conference. But again, widely talented guy, but again, another offense where you're installing a new offense. Again, takes about 8 to 10 weeks to install that offense. And we won't see who the Jags are at first, who they'll be in November. It'll be really interesting to see how this plays out. I'm looking to see how they develop, how Daniel Jones develops, how CJ Stroud develops. So, I mean, again, super interesting conference from a lot of stuff. Again, Jacksonville has a chance for some real upside surprise. They were 3-10 last year in 1-score games. So, there is a chance for them to really do this. And their defense was historically bad. They only had one game where the defense had more than 1 turnover, and that was the least amount of multi-turnover games in NFL history by a defense. So again, lots of opportunity for them to do this. The Jags also were last in pre-snap motion last year, with Tampa was 6th. So I certainly expect a lot of change this year with that offense. You're going to see a new look offense. You're probably going to see a lot of difference on the defense. I think turnovers will be big. There's certainly a lot of opportunity for growth. But again, Jacksonville, you look at the worst teams that, with just a new offense, again, I kind of expect a rough September from them. The Jags historically are rough. If you look at the last 3 seasons, the Jags have the worst September of any team in the last 3 seasons, going 3-11 in September. So with a changing in offense, with this new install, we'll see how it goes. If they happen to pop early, could be a very good year for the Jags. I'm certainly excited about it. 13 of their 17 games last year were decided by 17 points or fewer, by 7 points or fewer. So again, lots of opportunity for them to go away or things to go better for them this year. I'm excited about seeing them. We will see how they go. I'm trying to look at their schedule real quick because I want to see who they play early this year. They start off versus Carolina at home. That's a good opportunity. They play at Cincinnati and then versus Houston and then at San Francisco and then versus Kansas City, then versus Seattle, and then versus the Rams over in the UK before they get their bye week. So that's kind of a rough start for them. It's a really rough start. That could turn out not so well, but again, the AFC South is soft. There's opportunity there. We'll see how it goes, but I hope Trevor Lawrence is not a bust. I hope it goes well for him. But I think there's a lot of pressure on him because, to your point, he's a middle-of-the-pack quarterback, but he's being paid at the second highest rate of any quarterback out there. And I think that puts a lot of pressure on him. When you take the money like that, there's going to be negative consequences. If he went to other city besides Jacksonville, I think the walls would be coming down on him.
Yeah, well, in a league with a salary cap and the hardest salary cap in all of professional sports, when you overpay a guy, that's negative value, right? So, yep. And I think they've done that. But I agree with you. I like your points because I agree with you that while, everybody might be negative on Trevor Lawrence because he wasn't this amazing prospect, he's just a middle-of-the-pack quarterback, that most of the pointers are to a positive surprise for the team. I agree with that, including the turnover margin. So if you get a surprise from this team, it'll be to the upside. They just may not be world beaters.
100%. I mean, wouldn't it be amazing if at the end of the year we're talking about Trevor Lawrence and like all of a sudden has an MVP year under this new offensive quarterback, offensive head coach who just, wasn't Urban Meyer, wasn't Doug Peterson, and then finally has the guy who finally turns the right switch with him and it becomes essentially his quarterback whisperer the way he did with Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's turned in a little bit of a kingmaker as well. He's had offensive coordinators gone on, become the Panthers coach and Dave Canales. And then he's also had Liam Cohen. So things have really turned on for Baker. And hopefully
it's possible.
It took a few years for Baker the light to come on. Maybe the light comes on for Trevor Lawrence this year. And maybe we're talking about Trevor Lawrence potentially an MVP. And all of a sudden, they win the division because, like you said, there's so much upside to them that the potential, we'll see how it goes, can happen quickly in this first year for Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence. I don't know, but it's sure going to be fun to watch. So
I think he plays better, but not great. He's still only 25. And so, the potential for this team is to the upside. Yeah.
Super young. I know quarterbacks are being judged faster now because there's all this 7-on-7. It typically used to be, 2 years and we'll judge them on the third year. Now it's almost by the second year by Thanksgiving that we know if this team's going to pop. And a lot of teams, make judgments very early, even in the first year, if this guy's going to pop. Certainly Anthony Richardson kind of fell into that story. It's like he just doesn't have it and they're moving on. But hopefully the league is certainly better with better quarterback play. I hope that Trevor Lawrence does well this year. I certainly had high hopes for him and I certainly haven't given up. And I don't think Jags fans should either. But talking about a team a fan base that hasn't had much to cheer on with Will Levis in the past, but now finally does with Cam Ward. Seems to be a guy with a high EQ, always says the right thing at the podium, does the things you'd want to, sounds, to a term called quarterbackial. He sounds like a quarterback. When you walk in and you're going to have surgery, you want somebody who's got an even disposition and temperament. You're like, okay, that guy, that gal's got things under control. And you're like, okay, I'm cool. I'm comfortable with that person operating on me because I know they're going to take care of me. You kind of feel that way with that. I mean, you kind of see that way with Jalen Hurts. You see that way with Dak Prescott. It's those intangibles. And by everything that we hear about Cam Ward, that he's got the tangibles as well. What are your thoughts? What did you see from him at Miami last year that that give you either optimism or pause about him?
I'm not a Cam Ward expert. I will say, his play style, from what I've seen of him, it reminds me a lot of Jameis Winston, where he's not afraid to spam the ball. I mean, I love Jameis Winston as a backup quarterback, because he can come in and just spam the ball for a game, and give you a chance to win. And the question is, does Cam Ward take better care of the ball? Does he throw it mostly to his guys instead of the other guys? And we're just going to have to see, can he process? But I will say this: when you're coming off of Will Levis, the only way to go is up. you can't really go down. The only thing he doesn't have that Will Levis does is the blonde hair and the guns. So
is right.
Yeah. He might not have the marketability of a Will Levis, but I think in terms of potential, there's another more potential, like the last two teams that we've analyzed or discussed, is there's potential for upside surprise even for a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, totally agree. Like, to your point on, look, he is known for taking care of the ball and seeing the field well. Last year, he had the second best in the entire NCAA, second best TD interception ratio, right behind Cade Klubnik last year. So he's going to take care of the ball. He's going to see it well. You and I both don't take much from preseason, if anything. But the one thing I did see about him, seems like he sees the field well, but he does take an extra step or two in the pocket on his drop back, which is going to cause him sacks, till he cleans that up. But it's a little footwork issue that he can easily clean up, and I'm sure that he's going to get cleaned up there. Again, I think he's going to do well. It'll be interesting. Unfortunately, had a little bit loss of one of his peers, Tajay Spears. Their promising running back had a little bit of a high ankle sprain. Supposed to be back for week 1. But as you know, high ankle sprains can linger. Unlike low ankle sprains, high ankle sprains are a tough one to come on. But again, excited to see what he's going to do this year. I think certainly Tennessee, again, in the building, they feel like that their roster is heading the right way, and they definitely feel like they got the right guy in Cam Ward. This year may not be their year, but they feel like the future is awfully bright with what they're building there in Tennessee, and I'm excited to see it. I'm in for it. What is, we're kind of at the end of this. We finished the AFC South. Rack them and stack them. I want to hear it. The Frixer, break them while you got them.
Yeah, so this is a tough division to call, A, because I don't watch it a lot, and B, because there's a lot of potential for change, especially with the bottom 3 teams. But I'm going to go Houston finishes number 1 again. I think the Colts will finish number 2. They have upside surprise potential. And man, it's really hard to call between the Titans and the Jaguars, but I'm going to give the Jaguars 3rd place just because they have the more experienced quarterback, and the Titans are going to be better, but still number 4 in the division.
Yeah, again, no disagreement from me either. I think the same thing. I'm really excited to see what Daniel Jones does with Shane Steichen. I think that we haven't seen the best of Shane Steichen because he's been limited by Anthony Richardson. That being said, feels like that Houston is, I'm probably going to stick with a safe play and say Houston finishes first in that. But I will not be surprised if Indianapolis takes that bigger jump because, again, Indianapolis has got a great roster, a really great roster. And to see Lou Anarumo come in on that, I'm anxious to see what that defense looks like. And if you can just get Daniel Jones, the regression of what they had last year, the positive regression is certainly opportunistic that they're – so, again, tons of stuff with AFC South. A lot of people aren't excited about it, but I am. A lot of people roll their eyes, and hold their nose at the AFC South. But yeah, I like it. I think it's got tons of potential, and I think it has the opportunity to be one of the most dynamic divisions that we have in the NFL this year. So
Well, I agree. Just based on the uncertainty. I mean, just as we've been discussing, there's a lot of uncertainty with 3 of the 4 teams, right? So yeah, it does have a lot of chance to be more of a horse race than you expect.
Yeah, 100%. That's a good final word to leave it on. Guys, thanks for tuning in. If you want more of this, follow me at Uncle Phil's Locks on X and on TikTok and on Instagram, and certainly subscribe and like on YouTube. I really appreciate those. Thank you for those that have come in. And also, if you want, I do subscription packages, and those are at my website at unclephilslocks.com. Guys, thanks for tuning in. As always, guys, we appreciate you. And as always, let's roll.